Hi, I'm Mark Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge, and I just want to bring your attention to the link below this video, which will take you through to audio of me replying to a recent question about working with an angry child client in therapy. So that might be of interest to you. But before you click through, or even if you don't, I'll just say a few words here about anger more generally, the state of anger itself. So firstly, I'm not talking about whether anger is justified or the benefits of some anger, such as motivating us to change things or protecting us from harm or other people from harm. Because like most emotions, anger, as long as it's not acute and chronic, can have its genuine uses. It's one of the emotions, well, all emotions help us survive in some way, in the right measure, in the right balance, at the right time. But like anything useful, if you use it too much, or if it uses you too much, it can really screw you up. And of course, the other people in your life. Now, here's the thing about anger. And sure, it can be a problem for small children. But the thing about it is, it makes everyone a small child when they experience it excessively. In other words, rage can reduce even the brightest of adults to an almost toddler-like state. In other words, rational decision-making is sidelined when you're in a rage. Reasoned, articulate debate just can't happen. We're not in touch with those parts of the brain that can do that when we're highly angry. Compassion flies out of the window. Extreme anger makes us all like young children, or even babies, and steals aspects of being that make us human. So the angrier you become, the more your IQ points drop. A professor of quantum particle physics is no more in touch with his or her intellect whilst in a blind rage than a 2-year-old having a tantrum. We know from research on the brain hemispheres that anger is one of those emotions which is the most unilateral of emotions, meaning that it's processed almost exclusively through the left hemisphere. Now, we also know from split brain research that the left hemisphere of the brain sees things very narrowly and literally. It's a part of you that grabs, that gets intolerant, that gets angry, that wants to manipulate things, that sees the world as just a bundle of resources to use, to manipulate, to grab. Okay, it wants what it sees. It sees people as objects to be manipulated and controlled. That's what the left hemisphere does. The enraged left brain sees the smaller picture, but not the bigger picture, which is the province of the wider seeing right hemisphere of the brain. So becoming very angry very often is also, of course, terrible for health, and specifically for heart function. At Stanford Medical School, researchers asked heart patients to think back to times when they'd been really angry. And as we know, there's a hypnotic effect to memory, and we can experience the physicality and the emotions of the time that we're recalling just by remembering it. So even though the patients in the research said that the anger they felt in that moment was only about half as intense as it had been in the original situation, their hearts still took a hit. So pumping about 5% less efficiently just by recalling those angry times. Or to put that in perspective, cardiologists say a 7% drop in heart function is enough to trigger a heart attack. So getting very angry is really bad for the heart. So our IQ and heart efficiency drops when we become highly angry. Yet unlike some of the other emotions like fear or disgust, anger can sometimes be quite seductive. It can feel quite good for the person experiencing it. There might be reinforcement rewards for getting very angry that the person has unconsciously learned. Rewards that can be learned as early as childhood. So we need to recognize that anger has its attractions for some people. It can feel quite addictive. For example, anger may confer apparent advantages such as instant attention from other people. If I start shouting and screaming in a restaurant, not that I'm prone to do that, But I'm assured of getting attention, and people do like attention. You might get people fearing you, which can feel like respect. We might get our own way because it's too much of a hassle for other people to sort of not give you your own way. And there can be a wonderful feeling of certainty and righteousness and energy and vitality. So much of life is ambiguous that it can be a relief and feel wonderful to have all that certainty. I am absolutely right. And there's no ambiguity. And that can be in itself seductive. People like certainty. And of course, anger in the right amount and in the right context can serve us powerfully well. Anger can give us energy and physical strength, can banish fear and self-consciousness. If you're enraged, you're not self-conscious. Okay, and self-consciousness isn't a very nice feeling. For example, anger can make us right or wrong, or lead us to stick up for ourselves and other people. But of course, anger is often not in the right amount or not in the right context. Inappropriate anger and irritability may be a signal that one or more of our primal emotional needs is not being met adequately. If I'm feeling angrier than usual, I might do well to ask myself, why? What am I lacking today or this part of my life? What do I feel that I need? Am I lonely? Am I unfulfilled in my work? What is it? What is the signal that anger is trying to relay to me? So if we can respond to our own anger in that way, it might lead us somewhere useful. But uncontrolled, chronic or toxic anger is always a problem. Chronic and acute anger issues can lead adults to ruin their relationships, job prospects, and health. But often the anger habit starts young. Certainly many angry adults were also angry children. Anyway, regardless of why a child exhibits extreme anger, whether it was through deprivation as a child and they had to fight for everything, or whether they were overly indulged and spoilt and got used to never chastised for being angry, never taught to control it, and so forth, we would still do well to help them learn to tame the anger early on so it doesn't become a lifelong problematic pattern for them and for other people in their lives. Yes, the anger might signal problems at home or even developmental issues in a child, but alongside searching for and seeking to ameliorate any causes, we should always seek to directly help the child tame their anger so they can socialize and learn effectively. It's not a stretch to say that helping a child overcome chronic anger may help prevent a lifetime of pain for them and for those who cross their paths later on. Anyway, not so long ago, I was asked during a Q&A call about any ideas I might have for helping a 10-year-old boy who'd been diagnosed with various emotional and developmental conditions deal with his anger. And bearing in mind I don't know the boy, I've never met him or much about his history or background, I give a rather broad brushstroke answer to that question, but I hope it's useful and gives you some ideas which are useful. And actually these ideas could apply to adults as well, of course, because anger as an emotional state, as with all strong emotions, tends to be non-age specific. So click the link in the description below to listen to my answer to the question about the angry child, or to read the transcript if you'd prefer to do that, and I hope you'll find it useful. I'm Mark Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge, and if you'd like to subscribe to my email newsletter, you can find it over at unk.com/blog. That's unk.com/blog, and thanks for watching.
It's good that the boy seems to have some emotional intelligence, and, as you say, understands emotions and feelings of characters in stories and so forth. And he sounds like he's been diagnosed with a lot of stuff already. And we'll, have to put aside, I suppose, any potential side effects of the medication that he's already been given that might affect his development. So first of all, we can separate anger for the boy's core identity. It's good also, you said that he's no longer aggressive to classmates, so that's changed. who knows what we can thank for that? Maybe the medication or maybe just maturing. So first of all, we'd need to look at, is the anger giving him anything? I mean, anger can be a very seductive emotion, and it's quite a powerful emotion. It can feel quite good to feel self-righteous and as if you're totally right and everything else is totally wrong, or everyone else is totally wrong. There's a very seductive emotion. And, when you're angry, you can make the best speech that you'll ever regret, and you can do all kinds of things. And in the moment, it's very trancy, and consequences can go out the window. Literally, I had a teacher who in an angry rage, threw a chair out of the window and was off work with stress, but not through choice, And, of course he wouldn't do that. If you sat down calmly with him and said, "Are you going to throw a chair through the window tomorrow?" He'd say no. But when you're angry, you kind of lose your mind a bit. Okay. The IQ drops quite a lot when you're angry. And, a quantum professor of physics is no more in touch with his or her intellect during a rage than a 2-year-old child. We don't become more intelligent, we become angry. And of course, anger can serve a purpose sometimes. But like any emotion, it needs to be context specific. It needs to actually work for us or for those around us, for those we're angry on behalf of and so forth in the moment. Otherwise it's blind and it causes problems. It's very powerful, but it can be destructive, as we all know. So we can, is he getting attention for this anger? Are people doing what he wants more often when he's angry? Is he feeling powerful? Is he getting anything from it? Okay. Then, presumably, if he is, then we'd need to build up a sense that actually it's working against him, So first off, we can work to separate anger from the boy's core identity. So not by parroting cliches that he's not the anger, the anger isn't him and he's not the anger and so on, but by talking with him about the anger as though it's not really who he is, his central self. So you can ask him to imagine that anger as a person. What would it look like? What has it stolen from him in terms of time or friendships and so on? If it had a voice, what would it sound like? How could he stand up to it in future and not let it boss him around? Okay. Not let him do things that later on weren't the best thing to do. What would it look like? Can you rehearse with him standing up to that anger? It whispering instead of shouting at him, it becoming weaker. Okay. Him having real choice and so on. So just as we might with an addiction, we can help detach him from the anger so that he becomes less identified with it. That's really what we're going for. So you can then start to explore with him and seek suggestions from him as to how he could and can in future not be dictated to by that emotion. That's really, it was Jalaluddin Rumi, the Persian poet who talked in terms of, house guests, emotions being house guests. They're not you. They stay for a while. You can welcome them in, but they can leave again. They are not you. And you don't necessarily have to give them house room. So we all might need to look at what anger may have been giving him in the form of attention, control of other people, excitement, and so on. But also we need to look at how he can start to feel that it's not him and that he can stand up to it and be assertive towards it. And talking of assertiveness, we might also want to teach him calm assertiveness skills, so you feel that things aren't going how you want them to go in this situation. What might be another way of requesting that things go your way? Or can you sometimes relax with them not going your way? These are important questions. Another question might be, has he learned this angry pattern from anyone else? We tend to learn as children, not by being told things, but by seeing things and being exposed to them. So, is there another angry pattern in his life? Is it a parent? Is it other kids? Something online? That kind of thing. So, but of course, anger can make us stand up for ourselves. And when we feel we or someone else close to us is, having a completion of an emotional need blocked by something, okay, which is really what anger's for. But like anything, it can be triggered when it doesn't need to be. Now, along with the ADHD, the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder that he's been diagnosed with, Asperger's, he's been diagnosed as having an anxiety condition. So if we think about anxiety, an anger problem can be the flip side of anxiety, the fight or flight response. So what specifically has been triggering this boy, and what alternative ways of responding to these specific triggers can we explore? So by talking to him calmly, you can get some typical trigger times. What specifically has pushed that anger button in the past around whatever situation it tends to get him angry. So anger is all about a narrowed focus of attention. Anger is a type of trance state. And we need to remember that. So we need to widen context in the moment. So anger as an emotion is extremely lateralized to the left hemisphere of the brain, which is the part of the brain, the hemisphere, that narrows focus of attention, but doesn't see the wider context. So if a bird, birds have left and a right hemisphere as well. A bird pecking a grain of something on the floor, is using its left hemisphere to narrow down and focus, but its right hemisphere is always working as well for potential predators. So it has the right hemispheric wider perspective perception needs to be there as well, which is why the right hemisphere in human beings is often associated with the idea of wisdom, because the wider your perspective, the more things you can see, of course, and wisdom is about seeing. So the left hemisphere is extremely trance-inducing or trance-focused, and extremely narrow and focused down on one thing. So how can we get him to appreciate a bigger context? Now one way is to do a context widening exercise, and you can start to really unhook the emotion from the kinds of triggers that have been tripping him up. So this is a mini hypnotic induction, and you can do this along with regular relaxation to get him generally calmed down, so that if his stress has generally been heightened, that it lessens. So first you could ask him to describe a time when he got very angry and it kind of wasn't the best response, which is usually, and you could ask him to close his eyes and recall that time that he got really angry, maybe with his classmates in the past or whatever. When he's recalled that time, and he's got something of the feeling of feeling angry again, you could have him open his eyes. Then, so you've got a sample of the problem. Then you can suggest that he can close his eyes again, and this time review the memory in a more interesting way. Now have him close his eyes and view that time from the outside. And what we invariably find is that when people view an emotionally charged memory from the outside within their imagination, they feel more detached from it. It feels less emotional for them. So you're asking him to notice things about himself in that situation that he's never noticed before. Maybe the way his face looked, or his body posture, or other people were responding, and so forth. So you're developing his observing self, the part outside of the anger. Then you can suggest to him that he can, feel very calm when he's reviewing that. Okay. So once he's reviewed that, then you can ask him to open his eyes again, then close them again. And this time he can watch himself calmly from the outside, had he remained calm in that time. So you're changing the template, the blueprint. Okay. And this time he's watching himself. He's learning from himself from the past. Had he remained calm and dealt with that time in a different way? Okay. Well, once he's done that, then you can ask him to drift into that self and notice what it feels like to be in that kind of trigger time, and to remain calm and relaxed, and just to deal with it in a different kind of way. And because he's only 10 years old, then you might find that this is very powerful and works very quickly, because he's still learning, to be human in a sense. So you're seeking to change the unhealthy pattern match so that those triggers start to trigger calm and coping and wider context perception, which anger hates, bigger context. So you could do this exercise with all the trigger times that he has. Now, what people often find after doing that exercise is that now when you think about it, that past time, it doesn't make you feel emotional anymore. So, and when that happens, you know that he's processed that and he's started to change the pattern match. Okay. So, to summarize some of that, externalize the anger from his core identity and work on trigger times and explore how well his emotional needs are met in other ways. And also the possibility of learning to be assertive calmly in life can help him as well.